Right now, as you're watching this video on March 12th, 2026, a man that most Americans had never heard of 3 weeks ago just sent a message directly to the United States of America. And I'm going to be honest with you, what he said should make every single one of us pay very close attention because this isn't some distant conflict that doesn't affect your life. This is a war that is already costing you money at the gas pump. It's already killing American soldiers, and the new leader of Iran just made it crystal clear that he has absolutely no intention of backing down. In fact, he's threatening to make things a whole lot worse. So if you care about your wallet, your safety, and the future of this country, you need to watch this entire video because what I'm about to break down for you is the most important geopolitical story happening in the world right now, and most people do not understand the full picture. So let's get into it. On Thursday, March 12th, 2026, Iranian state television broadcast a message that sent shockwaves around the globe. A news anchor appeared on screen. A photograph of a man was displayed behind them, and the anchor began reading words attributed to Mojtaba Khamenei, the brand new Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the son of the man the United States and Israel killed just 2 weeks ago. And here is what makes this so disturbing. The man whose words were being read out loud did not appear on camera. There was no video, there was no audio recording, just a still photograph and someone else's voice reading his statement. And the United States Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth later said the reason for that is because Mojtaba Khamenei is believed to be wounded and likely disfigured from the very same strike that killed his father. So think about that for a second. A man who was nearly killed by American bombs, whose father was assassinated, whose mother was killed, whose wife was killed, whose family was torn apart, is now the most powerful person in Iran. And his very first act as supreme leader was to promise vengeance against the United States of America. Now, here's a question that should genuinely concern every American watching this. What happens when the leader of a nation of 88 million people, a nation that controls one of the most important waterways on the planet, has a deeply personal reason to want revenge against the United States? Because that's exactly the situation we are in right now. And the answer to that question is already playing out in real time. In his first statement, Mojtaba Khamenei laid out exactly what Iran intends to do, and it is not surrender, it is not negotiation, it is escalation. He declared that the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway between Iran and Oman, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply normally flows, will remain closed and will continue to be used as a tool to pressure Iran's enemies. He demanded that every single United States military base in the Middle East be shut down immediately, and he warned that if those bases remain open, they will be attacked. He vowed that Iran will not stop seeking revenge for the blood of its martyrs, saying every citizen killed by the enemy is a case for vengeance in itself. And perhaps most chillingly, he revealed that Iran has been studying the possibility of opening entirely new fronts in this war, fronts where the enemy has little experience and is highly vulnerable. Let that sink in. He's not just talking about continuing the fight where it already is. He's talking about expanding it to places the United States is not prepared for. But wait, I need to stop and ask you something that gets to the heart of this entire situation. How did we even get here? How did the United States go from not being at war with Iran 3 weeks ago to being locked in the largest military conflict since Iraq? Because you cannot understand what's happening today without understanding the 10 days that led up to it. And the speed of what happened is almost impossible to believe. On February 28th, 2026, the United States and Israel launched what the White House called Operation Epic Fury, a massive joint military strike targeting over 2,000 sites inside Iran. The stated objectives were to destroy Iran's nuclear program, its ballistic missile infrastructure, and two, as the White House put it, crush the Iranian regime and end the nuclear threat. And in that very first wave of attacks, a precision strike on Tehran killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the man who had ruled Iran for 37 years, the most powerful figure in the country, gone in an instant. And that should have been the decisive blow, right? That should have been the moment where Iran folded, where the regime collapsed, where the White House could declare mission accomplished. But that is not what happened, not even close. By the way, if you're finding this breakdown valuable, do me a quick favor and smash that like button right now. it helps this video reach more people who need to understand what's really going on. And subscribe if you haven't already, because this story is developing by the hour, and I'm going to keep you updated on every single twist and turn. So here's what actually happened after the United States killed Iran's supreme leader. Iran did not collapse. Iran did not surrender. Iran hit back, and it hit back hard. Within hours of the initial strikes, hundreds of drones and ballistic missiles were launched at American military bases across the Gulf region. Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Iraq, and in those first days of retaliation, 6 American service members were killed, 6 Americans who went to sleep on February 27th in what was supposed to be peacetime and who never came home, and the attacks didn't stop. As of today, the Pentagon has confirmed that 7 U.S. soldiers have died and 8 have been seriously wounded, and those numbers could continue to climb because Iran has shown no sign of stopping its attacks. In fact, Iran's Revolutionary Guard has been launching wave after wave of missiles and drones at Gulf countries that host American troops. Saudi Arabia has been intercepting drones over its eastern region. Bahrain has reported intercepting over 100 missiles and nearly 200 drones since the war began. Qatar has been evacuating parts of its territory after missile warnings. Even Oman, a neutral country, has had civilians killed by falling drone debris, 2 people dead in a country that isn't even part of this fight. And the UAE, one of the most modern and wealthy nations in the Middle East, has had to activate air defenses to protect Dubai. A drone strike caused a fire there, another strike hit near Dubai's international airport, and an Iranian attack damaged a building in central Dubai. This is a war that has spread across an entire region in just 2 weeks. Now, here is a question I really need you to think about, because I think a lot of Americans are not asking it. Why does this war matter to someone sitting in Ohio or Texas or Florida right now? And the answer is painfully simple. It's already in your wallet. Before this war started, the average American was paying about $2.98 for a gallon of gas. As of this week, that number has jumped to $3.58. That's a 20% increase in 2 weeks. And in California, people are paying $5.34 a gallon. In San Francisco, some stations are charging $6.50. And here's the thing, it's not just gas. Crude oil prices have spiked above $100 a barrel multiple times since the conflict began. And because everything in America moves on diesel, your groceries, your Amazon packages, your building materials, every single thing that gets shipped by truck or boat is getting more expensive right now. Economists are warning that the monthly inflation rate in March could hit 1%, which would be the highest monthly increase in 4 years. Your grocery bill is about to go up. Your electricity bill could go up. And if oil prices keep climbing, some economists are warning we could be looking at a recession. The International Energy Agency has already authorized the release of 400 million barrels of oil from strategic reserves around the world, the largest such release in the agency's entire history. And that tells you just how serious this is. And here's something that should infuriate you no matter which side of the political aisle you're on. Why wasn't the Strategic Petroleum Reserve refilled before this war started? Because the Trump administration, which clearly planned this operation in advance, given the scale and coordination of the strikes, did not refill the reserve, leaving the United States more vulnerable to exactly this kind of price shock. And now the White House is saying that the short-term cost of higher prices is necessary to end the threat of the Iranian nuclear program. But for millions of American families, short-term pain at the pump means choosing between filling up their tank and putting food on the table. And that is not an abstract policy debate. That is real life for real people right now. Let me ask you another question that I think exposes one of the biggest contradictions in this entire situation. If the goal of this war was to crush the Iranian regime and bring about regime change, then why is the regime still standing and now led by someone who is even more hardline than the man we killed? Because that is exactly what happened. President Trump said repeatedly in the days after the strike that he wanted to be involved in choosing Iran's next leader. He called Mojtaba Khamenei a lightweight. He said the new Iranian leader would need his approval. He told multiple news outlets that Khamenei's son was unacceptable to him. And what did Iran do? Iran's Assembly of Experts, the 88-member clerical body that selects the supreme leader, convened an emergency session and chose Mojtaba Khamenei anyway, the exact person Trump said he would not accept. And multiple analysts have pointed out that Trump's public demands may have actually made it easier for them to choose Mojtaba because it became a question of national sovereignty. The assembly wasn't just picking a leader, they were sending a message to the United States. You do not get to tell us who runs our country. And now, instead of an 86-year-old supreme leader who had ruled for nearly 4 decades and was seen by some as cautious in his later years, we have a 56-year-old man with deep ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps who is believed to be more hardline and more radical than his father, a man with a personal vendetta against the country that killed his family. As one Democratic congressman put it, the United States replaced an 86-year-old terrorist dictator with a 56-year-old terrorist dictator. Quick pause here because I really want to make sure you're getting the full scope of what's happening. Please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I promise you this story is far from over. And when the next major development breaks, you're going to want to know about it immediately. Okay, let's keep going because it gets even more complicated. So President Trump has been sending very mixed signals about where this war stands. On March 9th, he told CBS News in a phone call from his golf club in Doral, Florida, that he thought the war was very complete. Pretty much, he said Iran has no navy, no communications, no air force. Their missiles are down to a scatter. He said there's nothing left in a military sense. And then hours later at a separate event, he struck a completely different tone, saying we've already won in many ways, but we haven't won enough. We go forward more determined than ever to achieve ultimate victory. And then by March 13th at the G7 summit, he was telling world leaders that Iran was about to surrender. And yet on the very same day, Iran was launching fresh waves of missiles at Israel, attacking tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, striking bases in Kuwait where 3 military personnel were injured, and firing drones at Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. And Mojtaba Khamenei's statement from the day before was still echoing with promises of vengeance and new war fronts. So I ask you, does that sound like a country that is about to surrender? And here's a question that military analysts are genuinely debating right now. Is the United States winning this war, or is it trapped in it? Because the numbers from the Pentagon sound impressive on paper. Defense Secretary Hegseth said the military has hit around 15,000 Iranian targets since the war began. They've hit or sunk more than 90 vessels, including over 30 mine-laying boats. The Joint Chiefs Chairman said Iran's ballistic missile attacks are down 90% from the start of the war, and drone attacks are down 83%. But here's the other side of those numbers. Iran is still launching attacks every single day. The Strait of Hormuz is still effectively closed. Oil is still above $100 a barrel. American soldiers are still dying. And the United States has not achieved any of its stated political objectives. The regime has not changed in the way Washington wanted. Iran has not surrendered. Iran has not agreed to stop its nuclear program. And Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi went on PBS and said flatly that negotiating with the United States would not be on the table again. He pointed out that the U.S. attacked Iran during nuclear talks in June 2025 and then attacked again in February 2026 while another round of talks was underway. Iran's Speaker of Parliament said publicly that Iran is not seeking a ceasefire. And the Revolutionary Guard spokesperson said that Iran, not the United States, would determine when the war ends. So you tell me, who is controlling the narrative here? Now let's talk about the Strait of Hormuz, because this is the single most important piece of geography in this entire conflict. And it is the reason this war is hitting your bank account. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway. At its narrowest point, it's only about 21 miles wide. It sits between Iran on one side and Oman and the UAE on the other. And in normal times, roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes through it every single day. When Iran effectively shut down commercial shipping through the strait at the start of this war, it created what the International Energy Agency called the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. Oil production from Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE collectively dropped by at least 10 million barrels per day as of March 12th. That is a staggering amount of oil removed from the global market, and the ripple effects are being felt everywhere. And here's what makes Mojtaba Khamenei's statement so dangerous. He didn't just say the strait would stay closed. He said it must continue to be used as leverage, meaning Iran sees the Strait of Hormuz as its most powerful weapon, and they intend to keep using it. And the Iranian Revolutionary Guard warned that if the U.S. attacks Iran's energy infrastructure, Iran will retaliate against energy sites across the entire Middle East. They even said, and this is extraordinary, if you can tolerate oil at more than $200 per barrel, continue this game. $200 a barrel. Do you know what that would mean for the average American? Gas prices that could hit $7, $8, maybe even $10 a gallon. It would mean a recession almost certainly. It would mean inflation spiraling out of control. It would mean everything you buy getting dramatically more expensive. And it's not just a bluff, because Iran has already been attacking energy infrastructure. Tankers have been hit near Iraq. Container ships have been struck near the UAE. A major fire broke out at the Fujairah bunkering hub in the UAE after drone debris fell during an interception. And Saudi Arabia's largest refinery has been targeted. This is already happening. Now the question is how much worse it can get. President Trump said the U.S. bombed every military target on Iran's Karg Island, which is where most of Iran's crude oil exports flow through. But he said they deliberately spared the oil infrastructure. However, he warned that if Iran continues to block the strait, the oil infrastructure would be next. So we are on the razor's edge of an even more catastrophic escalation. And here's something that isn't getting enough attention. What is Mojtaba Khamenei actually like? Because who this man is matters enormously for what comes next. Unlike his father, who was a public figure for decades, Mojtaba Khamenei operated in the shadows. He was described in U.S. diplomatic cables released by WikiLeaks as the power behind the robes, widely viewed within the regime as a capable and forceful leader. He has deep, deep ties to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is both the most powerful military force in Iran and the organization that controls much of the country's economy and political apparatus. He fought in the Iran-Iraq War. He became increasingly influential as his father aged, and he was always seen as a hardliner's hardliner. U.S. intelligence assessed that he could be more radical than his father, and now he's been handed power under the most extreme circumstances imaginable. His family was killed by American bombs. He himself was wounded, possibly disfigured, and his first words to his nation were about vengeance and escalation, not peace and negotiation. Trump told Fox News that he doesn't believe Mojtaba Khamenei can live in peace, and for once, the intelligence community and the president seem to agree on something. Let me ask you this, because it's a question that I think is going to define the next several weeks and maybe months of American life. What is the end game here? Because right now, nobody seems to have a clear answer. The Pentagon has shifted its stated objectives multiple times since the war began. Initially, it was about destroying Iran's nuclear program and missile infrastructure. Then it became about regime change. Then Defense Secretary Hegseth added security for commerce in the region. And now there's talk of taking over the Strait of Hormuz. The goals keep expanding while the path to achieving any of them keeps getting murkier. And meanwhile, the war is spreading. Hezbollah in Lebanon has launched over 200 rockets into Israel. The Israeli military is conducting strikes in Beirut. The U.S. Air Force lost a refueling aircraft and all 6 crew members in a crash in western Iraq that the military says was not caused by hostile fire but occurred in a war zone. A Marine Expeditionary Unit is being deployed to the Middle East, and nobody is quite sure what their mission will be. And the UN Refugee Agency says as many as 3.2 million Iranians have been forced from their homes. This thing is getting bigger, not smaller. And I haven't even mentioned the nuclear dimension yet, which might be the most terrifying part of all. Before this war started, the International Atomic Energy Agency's confidential assessment indicated that Iran had accumulated enough material for multiple nuclear devices, and the breakout timeline, the time between Iran deciding to build a weapon and actually having one, had compressed from years to months to potentially just weeks. That assessment was one of the primary justifications for launching Operation Epic Fury. But here's the paradox. If the goal was to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and the strikes did not completely destroy Iran's nuclear capability, then we may have actually accelerated Iran's motivation to build one, because right now, Iran is watching what happened to its country after not having nuclear weapons. It's watching its supreme leader get assassinated, its infrastructure get bombed, its military get degraded, and it's learning the same lesson that North Korea learned years ago, that the only guarantee of survival in a world with the United States is having a nuclear deterrent. As one former Israeli military intelligence official warned, the killing of Iran's supreme leader could push the regime to race for a nuclear breakout as a direct response. Here's the final question I want to leave you with, because I think it's the one that matters most to every American watching this. What does this mean for you? Not in some abstract geopolitical sense, but in real, concrete terms. It means you are going to be paying more at the gas pump for the foreseeable future. It means your grocery bills are likely going up. It means the Federal Reserve is in what economists are calling a no-win situation, because higher oil prices push up inflation, but the economy is slowing down and they can't cut rates to help growth without making inflation worse. It means mortgage rates may stay elevated. The 30-year fixed rate has already climbed to 6.14%. And it means American service members are in harm's way right now, tonight, as you watch this video, with a new supreme leader promising to attack every U.S. base in the region. And the man delivering those threats, Mojtaba Khamenei, has not even appeared on camera yet. We don't know his true physical condition. We don't know the full scope of his plans. We don't know what these new fronts he mentioned actually are. And we don't know how far he's willing to go to avenge the family that American bombs took from him. What we do know is that this war is not over. It is not very complete, and it is not about to end with Iran's surrender. It is a conflict that is reshaping the Middle East, roiling the global economy, and directly impacting the lives of 330 million Americans, whether they realize it or not. So here's what I need from you right now. First, share this video with someone who needs to understand what's happening, because the mainstream coverage is giving you fragments and sound bites, and I just gave you the full picture in 30 minutes. Second, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because I'm going to be covering every major development in this conflict as it happens. And third, drop a comment below telling me what you think. Do you believe this war will be over soon, like the president says? Or do you think we're looking at something much longer and much more costly? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your perspective, because this affects all of us. This is the biggest story in the world right now. Stay informed, stay alert, and I'll see you in the next one.